What if one moment of silent defiance could not only shatter the expectations of a billionaire, but also ignite a revolution that would change the lives of countless immigrants? Lena Alvarez moved through the polished chaos of La Belle Étoile like a whisper in a hurricane. At 30, she was a ghost of the wealthy patrons of New York's premier restaurant. Her starched black uniform, tight bun of dark hair, and warm brown eyes fading into the opulence of crystal chandeliers, velvet drapes, and marble floors. Her faint Colombian accent, soft yet distinct, marked her as an outsider in a city that worshipped ambition and pedigree. To the diner savoring $400 plates of truffle-infused lobster, she was merely a waitress, a fleeting presence in their world of power. To Lena, this job was a lifeline, a fragile thread tethering her to survival, and to the family she cherished in Bogotá, 2,500 miles away. Born in a sun-baked village outside Bogotá, Lena grew up cradled by words. Her mother, Rosa, a seamstress with hands scarred from years of needlework, wove stories in Spanish, her voice a lullaby of love and resilience. Her father, Mateo, a librarian with ink-stained fingers and a dreamer's heart, brought home dog-eared books in Portuguese, French, and English, igniting Lena's passion for languages. By 16, she spoke 3 fluently, her tongue weaving Spanish proverbs, Portuguese sonnets, and English novels with ease. By 22, she was a linguistic professor at a Bogotá university, her lectures on Arabic, Russian, Mandarin, Italian, and German captivating students who filled her classroom to the brim. Her 9th language, Portuguese, was a gift from her Brazilian roommate, Clara, a poet who taught her to dance samba and dream without limits. Lena's world was a mosaic of voices, each language a key to a new soul. She could negotiate peace in Arabic, debate philosophy in Russian, or confess love in Italian. Her students called her La Maestra de las Palabras, the teacher words, and she thrived in the glow of their admiration. But dreams are fragile in a country torn by conflict. Political violence in Colombia shattered her life. Her university was bombed, its library reduced to ash. Her father vanished during a government raid, his fate a question mark that haunted her. Rosa, her mother, begged her to flee, pressing a worn photo of the family into her hands. At 26, Lena arrived in New York with a suitcase, a PhD, and a heart heavy with grief. In New York, her credentials were meaningless. Her accent was a barrier, her past a shadow. She took the job at La Belle Étoile, sending every spare dollar to Rosa, who now cared for Lena's 14-year-old sister, Sophia, a bright-eyed girl with dreams of becoming a doctor. Lena's days blurred into nights of aching feet, forced smiles, and the constant sting of being underestimated. She lived in a cramped Queens apartment with 2 roommates, Maria, a single mother from Mexico, and Aisha, a Syrian refugee studying to be a nurse. Their late-night talks over chamomile tea, filled with laughter and tears, were Lena's sanctuary in a city that felt like a labyrinth. At work, Lena was invisible, her brilliance buried under the weight of survival. Yet she carried herself with a quiet strength, her 9 languages a secret she guarded like a flame in a storm. She memorized a menu in French for practice, whispered Arabic poetry to herself during breaks, and wrote Russian proverbs in a notebook she kept hidden. Her co-workers noticed her resilience, but not her depth. To them, she was Lena, the kind waitress who never complained, even when patrons snapped their fingers or left no tip. Tonight, La Belle Étoile was ablaze with charity gala for a children's hospital. The dining room glittered with New York's elite. Politicians in tailored suits, actors with camera-ready smiles, tech moguls sipping $600 champagne. Lena navigated the crowd, balancing trays of caviar, foie gras, and gold-flecked desserts, her smile a shield against the exhaustion carving into her bones. Tucked in her apron was Sophia's latest letter, a sketch of a stethoscope and the words, "I'm studying hard, Lena, for you." It was her anchor, a reminder of why she endured the long shifts, the sneers, the ache of invisibility. As she served a table of hedge fund managers, she overheard snippets of their world, mergers, yachts, private jets, and tuned them out. Her mind was on Rosa's last call, her voice frail but hopeful. Sophia's top of her class, Mija. You're keeping her dream alive. Lena's heart swelled, but the weight of responsibility pressed harder. She needed $1,500 by next week for Sophia's school fees and Rosa's medical bills. Failure wasn't an option. Then the door swung open, and the air in the room shifted. Brian cross-strode into La Belle Étoile, like a conqueror claiming his empire. At 42, he was Silicon Valley's untouchable titan, a billionaire whose AI empire had redefined industries. His charcoal suit was tailored to perfection. His platinum watch glinted under the chandeliers, and his ice-blue eyes scanned the room with a predator's precision. His entourage, 3 bodyguards with earpieces, a PR manager named Vanessa in a sleek red dress, and 2 executives with nervous laughs, trailed him, their presence amplifying his dominance. Brian's reputation was a double-edged sword, a genius who built machines that outthought humans, but a man who treated people like pawns in his game of power. The hostess, a young woman named Emily, flustered by his aura, led Brian to a prime table by the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Manhattan's twinkling skyline. Lena approached, her notepad ready, her nerves already frayed from overhearing him berate the valet outside for a smudge on his Bentley. She steeled herself, her voice steady despite the knot in her stomach. "Good evening, sir," she said, her English clear but softened by her Colombian accent. "May I take your order?" Brian leaned back in his chair, his smirk sharp as a blade. "Well, look at you, speaking English. Where'd you learn that?" "Duolingo." His entourage chuckled, feeding his ego like kindling to a fire. Lena's stomach twisted, her cheeks flushing. She'd faced condescension before, but his tone cut deeper, laced with cruelty that felt personal. "I've lived here a few years, sir," she said, her voice even. "Would you like to see the wine list?" Brian waved a hand dismissively, his voice loud enough to turn heads at nearby tables. "I'm just surprised, you know? Most immigrants like you don't bother learning the language of the country. They're mooching off." He grinned, relishing the attention. "It's cute that you're trying." The words hit like a slap. Lena's pulse hammered in her ears, her hands trembling slightly as she gripped her notepad. The room's eyes were on her, some patrons smirking, others shifting uncomfortably. A woman at a nearby table, a journalist named Sarah with sharp eyes and a leather-bound notebook, paused her pen, her gaze narrowing. An older couple, David and Ellen, exchanged a glance, their faces tight with disapproval. Lena forced a smile, her voice steady despite the heat rising in her chest. "We have an excellent Pinot Noir. Would you like to try it?" Brian laughed, a harsh, grating sound that echoed in the quieting room. Plain professional. "Huh? Sweetheart, don't strain yourself. Just bring me the best red you've got, and don't screw it up." Lena nodded and turned away, her heart pounding. She felt the weight of every stare, the sting of every smirk. In the kitchen, she leaned against a stainless steel counter, her breath shallow. Adam, a line cook with a quick smile and a knack for reading people, noticed her tension as he flipped a steak on the grill. "You good, Lena?" he asked, his voice low over the sizzle of the pan. She forced a smile, her hand still trembling. Just another charming guest. Adam shook his head, his eyes narrowing. "That guy's trouble. You don't have to take that crap." Lena didn't respond. She was thinking of Sophia's letter, of Rose's tired voice, of the $1,500 she needed to send. She couldn't afford to lose this job, not when her family's future rested on her shoulders. But something else stirred, a spark of the woman she used to be, the professor who commanded respect, whose words could shift hearts and minds. She wasn't sure what she'd do, but the seed of rebellion was taking root. As the gala unfolded, Brian's behavior grew bolder, each jab a calculated move to assert his dominance. He snapped his fingers at Lena, called her senorita in a mocking drawl, and complained about the service to his entourage, his voice carrying over the clink of crystal. "This place is overrated," he said loudly, tossing a shrimp back onto his plate with a sneer. "And the staff? Barely competent. They're lucky I'm here." Lena served him flawlessly, her movement precise, her smile a mask carved from years of endurance. But inside, her frustration simmered, a slow burn threatening to ignite. She caught Sarah's eye across the room. The journalist was watching intently, her pen moving again. David and Ellen, the older couple, whispered each other, their discomfort palpable. Lena felt the weight of their stares, but also the weight of her own silence. How many times had she swallowed insults to keep the peace? How many times had she let the world assume she was less? At one point, Brian accidentally knocked over his wine glass, the crimson liquid pooling on the white tablecloth like spilled blood. He smirked as Lena knelt to clean it, his voice low but cutting. "You're lucky to have this job. You know, most people like you wouldn't last a day in a place like this." Lena's hand froze, her eyes meeting his for a fleeting moment. His gaze was cold, amused, daring her to react. Her heart pounded, a mix of rage and resolve. She stood, her voice calm but laced with steel. "I'll bring you another glass, sir." The room was watching now, the tension thick as a storm cloud. Sarah scribbled furiously, her eyes darting between Lena and Brian. David leaned forward, his hand resting protectively on Ellen's. A young couple at another table, tech entrepreneurs with flashy watches and casual arrogance, snickered, egging Brian on. Lena, aware of the crowd, felt her resolve waver. She could lose everything, her job, her income, her chance to support Sophia. But the spark of defiance grew brighter, fed by the memory of her father's voice. "Words are your power, Lena. Never let them take it." In the kitchen, she grabbed a blank card from the manager's desk, her hand trembling with purpose. She wrote a message, each word deliberate, her 9 languages flowing like a river breaking through a dam. Her handwriting was elegant, a contrast to the chaos in her chest. She tucked the card into her apron and returned to the dining room, her heart steady now, her steps firm. But the night wasn't done testing her. As she served a table of diplomats, she overheard Brian talking to Vanessa, his PR manager, whose sharp red dress matched her ambition. "That waitress," Brian said, his voice dripping with disdain. "She's the perfect example of what's wrong with this country. No skills, no education, just taking up space." Vanessa laughed, but it was forced, her eyes flickering with unease. Lena's grip on her tray tightened, her knuckles whitening. She glanced at Adam, who was watching from the kitchen door, his jaw tight. Sarah's pen froze, her expression hardening. Lena knew this moment was bigger than her. It was about every immigrant who'd been dismissed, every voice silenced by prejudice. The card in her apron felt like a weapon, but also a vow. Lena's life wasn't just a restaurant. In her Queens apartment, Maria and Aisha were her anchors, their bond forged in the crucible of shared struggles. Maria, 35, was a single mother who cleaned offices at night, her hands rough from bleach, but her laugh a burst of sunlight that could warm any room. Her 8-year-old son, Diego, was her world, but he'd come home crying that week, bullied at school for his accent. "He's ashamed to speak Spanish," Maria had confided over tea, her voice breaking. "He says he wants to sound American. I don't know how to help him." Lena had hugged her, promising to teach Diego phrases in other languages. "Let him see how powerful words can be," she said, her voice firm. "He's not less because he speaks Spanish. He's more." Aisha, 27, nodded quietly, her dark eyes thoughtful. A Syrian refugee. She was studying to become a nurse, her textbook spread across their tiny kitchen table, her determination a quiet fire. "You're good at that, Lena," Aisha said. "You make people feel seen." Those words echoed now as Lena faced Brian's table. She wasn't just fighting for herself. She was fighting for Maria, Aisha, Diego, and every immigrant who'd been told they were less. Her card was a weapon, but also a promise to those she loved. Another subplot simmered at work. Adam, 28, had been at La Belle Etoile for 5 years, his quick hands and sharp wit making him a favorite in the kitchen. He dreamed of opening a food truck with his mother's Jamaican recipes, jerk chicken, plantains, and curry goat that could rival any Michelin star. He and Lena had bonded over their shared hustle, swapping stories of late-night shifts and big plans. He'd seen her take insult before, but tonight he sensed a shift. "You got fire in you, Lena," he'd said once, tossing a towel over his shoulder. "Don't let these fools put out." Then there was Claire, the restaurant manager, a no-nonsense woman in her 40s, with a steel spine and a soft spot for her staff. She'd hired Lena despite her lack of experience, seeing something in her eyes, resilience maybe, or hunger. Claire had her own battles, running a restaurant in a cutthroat city, appeasing entitled patrons like Brian, and shielding her team from their worst excesses. Earlier that night, she'd pulled Lena aside, noticing her tension. "You're better than this place, Lena," she'd said, her voice low. "Don't let anyone make you feel small." There was also Emily, the hostess, a 22-year-old college student who idolized Lena's calm under pressure. Emily had confided in her about her own struggles, balancing school, work, and a family that didn't understand her ambition. "You make it look easy," Emily had said, her eyes wide. Lena had smiled, hiding the weight she carried. "It's never easy," she'd replied, "but you keep going." These connections, Maria, Aisha, Adam, Claire, Emily, were Lena's strength, grounding her as she prepared to face Brian again. They were her reason to fight, her reminder that she wasn't alone. The gala was at its zenith, the crowd buzzing with dessert and aged cognac. Brian's table was the loudest, his voice booming as he bragged about his latest AI breakthrough. A neural network that could outthink most humans, he claimed, his arrogance filling the room. Lena approached with the check, her expression neutral, her heart a drumbeat of resolve. "Here you are, sir," she said, placing the leather folder on the table with a soft thud. Brian barely glanced at her, tossing his platinum credit card onto the folder with a flick of his wrist. "Took you long enough," he sneered. "Don't expect a tip of that accent, though." His entourage laughed, but it was strained, the room's energy shifting like a tide. Lena didn't move. She reached into her apron and pulled out the card, placing it beside the check with deliberate care. Her voice was soft but clear, cutting through the noise like a blade through silk. "Thank you for dining with us tonight." Brian frowned, his brow furrowing as he picked up the card. His smirk faded as he read the words, written in elegant, deliberate handwriting. Below them, in English, a final line. "I may not look like much, but I know the world in a way you will never understand." The room fell silent, the clink of glasses and murmur of voices vanishing like smoke. Brian's face flushed, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. His entourage froze. Vanessa stared at the card, her smile gone. The executives avoided his gaze. The bodyguard shifted uncomfortably. Lena stood tall, her eyes locked on Brian's, no longer hiding the fire that burned within her. "What the hell is this?" Brian stammered, his voice cracking, barely above a whisper. Lena's smile was serene, her voice steady as steel. "Just a thank you, sir, in case you were wondering if I speak English or anything else." A single clap broke the silence from Sarah's table. David and Ellen joined in, their hands steady. The young tech couple, chastened, added their applause. Within seconds, the entire restaurant was on its feet, a thunderous ovation for Lena's brilliance, her courage, her grace. Brian sank into his chair, his arrogance shattered like glass under a hammer. Lena turned and walked away, the applause following her into the kitchen like a wave. Adam was waiting, grinning ear to ear. "You just slayed a dragon, Lena." She exhaled, the weight of the night lifting, her hands still trembling from adrenaline. I had to." Claire appeared, her eyes shining with pride. "You did more than that. You showed them who you are." Emily rushed in, her face alight. "Lena, that was incredible. Everyone's talking about you." Across the room, Sarah slipped the card into her notebook, her eyes gleaming with a story that would hit the headlines by morning. David and Ellen approached Claire, asking to speak with a remarkable young woman who just taught us all a lesson. The next morning, Lena arrived at La Belle Étoile, expecting the buzz to have faded. Her feet ached. Her mind replayed the night's events in a loop, but she felt lighter, as if she'd shed a skin she'd outgrown. She found Claire waiting in the office, her expression unreadable. "Lena, you've got a call," Claire said, handing her the phone. "It's Brian Cross." Lena's heart skipped, a flicker of fear mingling with curiosity. Was he angry, planning to retaliate? She took the phone, her voice cautious. "This is Lena." "Lena, it's Brian Cross." His tone was different, humbled, almost nervous, a far cry from the arrogance of the night before. "I owe you an apology. What I said, Last night was inexcusable. I misjudged you, and I'm sorry. Lena stayed silent, letting him continue, her fingers tightening around the receiver. I was blown away, he said, his voice earnest. Not just by your languages, but by your composure, your strength. My company's going global, Tokyo, Dubai, Berlin, Sao Paulo. We need someone like you, an international consultant to bridge cultures, negotiate deals, build trust. You'd be perfect, Lena. Name your salary. I'm serious. Lena's breath caught, her mind spinning. The offer was a lifeline, a corner office with a view, a chance to use her skills, to travel the world, to send Sophia to medical school without worry. She could see herself in a tailored suit, translating contracts in Mandarin, mediating disputes in Arabic, dining with diplomats in Paris. Her PhD would finally mean something. Her years of hiding would be over. She could be the woman she'd always dreamed of becoming. But something stopped her, a quiet voice in her heart. She thought of Maria's tears as she spoke of Diego's shame. She thought of Aisha's late-night study sessions, her hands trembling over anatomy flashcards. She thought of the women in her apartment building, Luz from Honduras, Charlotte from France, Adele from Germany, whose dreams were buried under prejudice, paperwork, and fear. She thought of her father, who taught her that words were power, and her mother, who taught her to fight for others. She thought of Sophia, whose latest letter had arrived that morning. A photo of her in a lab coat, her stethoscope gleaming, and the words, "I'm going to make you proud, Lena." Lena closed her eyes, the vision of the corner office fading. She saw a different future, one where she wasn't alone at the top, but surrounded by others rising with her. "Thank you, Mr. Cross," she said, her voice steady, resonant with conviction. "But I have a different path." Brian paused, surprised, his voice tinged with respect. "Can I ask what—" Lena smiled, though he couldn't see it. "I'm going to help people like me find their voices." Before hanging up, Brian cleared his throat, his tone softer. "If you ever change your mind, the offer stands. And I'm sending something to the restaurant. A gesture. You deserve it." Lena didn't know what he meant, but she felt a shift as the world had tilted slightly in her favor. She reclaimed her power, and the echoes of that moment were rippling outward. 10 months later, Lena stood in a brightly lit community center in Queens, addressing a room of 80 women. They were from Honduras, Ethiopia, India, Ukraine, Somalia, Mexico, Syria, each with stories of struggle, resilience, and hope. The walls were adorned with posters in multiple languages, offering classes in English, self-defense, financial literacy, job training, and immigration support. The sign above the door read, "Voces Fuertes, Strong Voices." The nonprofit Lena had poured her heart and soul into building. "Welcome, everyone," Lena said, her voice warm but commanding, filling the room like sunlight. "Tonight, we're learning English phrases for job interviews, but we're also learning how to stand tall, how to demand respect, how to claim your place in this world. You are not invisible. You are powerful." The women nodded, some nervous, others eager, their faces reflecting a spectrum of dreams. Maria was there, teaching a Spanish literacy class, her son Diego passing out worksheets with grin, his confidence blooming as he practiced French and Arabic phrases Lena had taught him. Aisha led a study group for nursing exams, her own certification just days away, her quiet strength a beacon for others. Luz, Charlotte, and Adele were instructors now, leading classes in sewing, coding, and public speaking, their own journeys mirrored in the women they taught. Lena shared her story, not as a hero, but as a woman who'd stumbled, fallen, and risen. She spoke of her father's disappearance, the library reduced to ash, the night she fled Colombia with nothing but a photo and a prayer. She spoke of her mother's sacrifices, of Sophia's dreams, of the years she hid her brilliance to survive. She spoke of the gala, the card, the applause, not to boast, but to show them what was possible. "Your voice is your power," she said, her eyes meeting theirs. "Don't let anyone take it." Voces Fuertes had become a movement. Sarah's article, headlined "Waitress Silences Billionaire with 9 Languages," went viral, shared millions of times across social media. Donations poured in, Small contributions from strangers, larger ones from foundations. David and Ellen, the couple from the gala, became major donors, their family foundation funding scholarships for Voces Fuertes students. An anonymous $750,000 gift, Lena suspected Brian, funded a second center in Brooklyn, a third in the Bronx, and plans for a fourth in Harlem. Lena hired immigrant women as instructors, creating a network that stretched across New York, a web of support and empowerment. She spoke at city halls, community boards, and even the United Nations, advocating for immigrant rights. Her 9 languages a bridge to communities others ignored. She met with mayors, senators, and activists, her voice growing stronger with each speech. But her heart remained in the centers, where she taught, listened, and learned from the women who called her hermana, sister, friend. One evening, as Lena locked up the Queen Center, Maria, Aisha, and Diego joined her on the steps. They shared tamales Maria had made. The cities hum a soft backdrop. Aisha handed Lena a newspaper clipping, Sarah's latest piece, profiling Voces Fuertes as a revolution of voices. Diego presented a drawing. Lena surrounded by flags from different countries, a stethoscope around her neck, a book in her hand. "For you," he said, his eyes bright. Lena's eyes welled up, her throat tight. "You're all my family now," she said, her voice breaking. Maria squeezed her hand, her own eyes misty. "You did this, Lena. You turned pain into power." Lena shook her head, tears falling freely. "We did this. All of us." Aisha smiled, her voice soft but sure. "Sophia's proud of you. She's going to save lives because of you." Lena pulled out Sophia's latest letter, her hands trembling with emotion. Inside was a photo of Sophia in a lab coat, her stethoscope gleaming, her smile radiant. The words read, "I'm going to save lives, Lena, like you're doing." Attached was a note from Rosa. "You've made us proud, Mija. Your father's watching from the stars. Keep speaking for those who can't." At La Belle Étoile, Adam trained a new waitress, pointing to a framed car behind the bar. Lena's 9-language thank you, now a legend etched into the restaurant's soul. "That's Lena's," he said, his voice proud. "She showed the world what she's made of. Don't let anyone dim your light." The waitress, a young woman from Nigeria, nodded, her eyes wide with inspiration. Adam had his own news. His food truck, Mama's Jerk, was opening next month, funded partly by a grant from Voces Fuertes. Claire, now a mentor to Lena, kept the card polished, a quiet tribute to the woman who'd changed them all. Across New York, Voces Fuertes centers buzzed with laughter, learning, and hope. Lena walked through one, Sophia's letter in her pocket, her heart full. Brian's gesture had arrived months ago, a $1 million scholarship fund in Lena's name for immigrant women with a note. "Keep changing the world, Lena. I'm learning from you." Under the Queen's sky, Lena looked at the stars, whispering gracias to the night. She saw her father's face in constellations, heard her mother's lullaby in the breeze. A group of girls from the center ran past, their voices calling out in Spanish, Arabic, and English. "See you tomorrow, Lena." She waved back, her smile radiant, her heart a flame that would never fade. She had no corner office, no billionaire's approval, but she had her voice, her community, and a legacy that would outshine any chandelier. As she walked home, the city's lights seemed to pulse with her rhythm, a testament to a woman who'd found her power and would never hide it again.